The challenge remains. On one side, there are formidable forces: money, political power, the major media. On our side, there are the people of the world and a power greater than money or weapons: the truth. Truth has a power of its own. Art has a power of its own. That age-old lesson that everything we do matters is the meaning of the people's struggle here and everywhere. A poem can inspire a movement. A pamphlet can spark a revolution. Civil disobedience can arouse people and provoke us to think. When we organise with one another, when we get involved, when we stand up and speak out together, we can create a power no government can suppress. We live in a beautiful country, but people who have no respect for human life, freedom or justice have taken it over. It's now up to all of us to take it back. And that was said by Howard Zinn and was taken from a book entitled A Power Governments Cannot Suppress. Have you ever wondered why you pay more for services now and yet you receive services that are far lower in standard than what you used to receive? Have you ever really stepped back and looked at the system? Because when you do, folks, it becomes very apparent that the people of this country and of all countries are being scammed. They're being dispossessed, and it's happening in the most insidious of ways. Now, as hard as it may be for many people in Western society to admit, and as much as many people may wish to hide from the fact, the truth is that our governments are stealing from us, ladies and gentlemen. They are quite purposefully and quite illegally stealing not only the wealth, but also the blood, the sweat, and the very lives of each individual. And they are stripping each country bare of their resources. They're doing it district by district, suburb by suburb, household by household. They are in the process right now of dispossessing all the people of the earth and locking the entire Western world down into a very meticulously planned, methodically constructed and covertly executed control grid.
important to our survival as a species. It's important to our planet. It is important for the world. It is important to our planet. It is important for the world. What happens to me is of no consequence, and I knew that when I started this. But I am telling you right now, your future, your children's future, your grandchildren's future, and your own government is selling your children drugs. We are truly now at this moment a nation of sheep. Your own government is selling your children drugs. It is important for the world. It is important to our planet. It is important for the world. It is important to our planet. We are truly now at this moment a nation of sheep. Your own government is selling your children drugs. We are truly now at this moment a nation of sheep. Your own government is selling your children drugs. I only have one message to give you. I don't care what you think of me. I don't care what you call me. I do care what you do with this information because it is important to our survival as a species. It's important to our planet. It is important for the world. It is important to our planet. It is important for the world. It is important to our planet. It is important for the world. It is important to our planet. It is important for the world. Now I am here, and now it is done. Now I am here, and now it is done. Now I am here, and now it is done.
حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل. حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل.
نحن لسنا بحاجة إلى تبريرات.
أيلدك تنزل ما عسى لبراك ما زراك لبراك ترى ما يش لبروش له ترى ما يش فوق قامكن ترى ما هو براك بكل بفشل بخيران كاكا هو سيلي يا لدي مكتنين
كدريم
مشان الله يا عالم كاكا كدوريم نتلاهم مش في الماء ترى يا لدك تنزل بيجيل 3.5 بيجيل خبرة بيجيل 3.5 بمات إما يلديم شلخين أتم تسكموا على زي أتم صرفين مشمشوا عساد أفار كذي
قد ما يكون قلبها ضيق، قد ما هي بتخاف وقد ما هي يعني بتكون متألمة، لكن بدها ابنها تحضنه وتتأكد عليه وتشوفه. اللي هو بقول انا هي نحمل اخذ اللي هو اخوه مين اخوه فرج، اللي هو بقول لا هي معايا، صرت اقول لها انا بقول له ولا دخل معطوني ابني، لقيته معطوله ابنه. لما شفت ابني احمد ساعتها كشفت واعي
شوف السجن عدم كان مبين وجمجمة راسه كانت مبينة. كان هو أكتر واحد مثلها. كنت أقول له صاحب الدار أمان في الإسعاف، ما حدش جاء من الساعة 7 وإحنا في دار ماجد من ساعة ما أبوه انطخ وأحمد انطخ، وأحمد في بين إيدي هو يعني وعملت له تنفس صناعي، وصرت أبلل له من ريقي برضه على شفايفي، مسحت له الدخان اتنشقوا، جبته صار يتحرك. اللي صرت أقول له صاحب الدار أمان هي صار ابني يتحرك أمان اتصل لي في الإسعاف في حدا على الفاضي. بقول له مران على 101 اللي هو بقول إحنا ما يعني مطافي، قلت لهم إحنا في نار، قولوا إحنا بدنا مطافي يجي نشلنا لأن ابني أحمد هذا راح بين إيدي. بعد أحمد فقدني وهو بشد أصابعه وهو بعد في إيدي وأنا مش قادرة أعمل له حاجة. العصريات جاء أخوته، فقلت إنه أحمد أكيد تاني جاء، خمرت خبزة وكوباية مية، صرت طعمين تنتف في تمه، كان جاعان في اللحظة هذه. صرت أحط نتفة يبلح، حسيت إنه جاعان بس ما قلتش أكتر له أكل، قلت أكيد رح يضره. لما كان يقول لي بدي مية أحط إصبعي في كوباية مية وأحط على شفايفي كان يبلعها. مع أذان المغرب صار ينازع، صار النفس اللي في بطني مثلا قبل ما يكملني، قبل اللحظة هذه لما بقول لي ما بدي أخذك معي في الجنة أنت وأبوك، وبعد الجنة لما بقول صار يكفر، صار يقول لي ما بدي أصلي، قلت له صلي طيب زي ما أنت، قال بدي يطول. قلت له صلي زي ما أنت من دون ودي أحمد. صار صرت الحمد قراها والله العظيم ما تخربط فيه. صرت أقول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولا هو، وأنا قلبي بتقطع وعارف إنه مش هيرجع تاني.
She's telling us the story of her kid Ahmad. She was saying that he was with his uncle, and when she escaped and went to a home. She was like, "Give me my son, I want my son, where is my son?" And he was like, "Okay, your son is with me. Don't worry, he's with me." She was like, "Give it to me." But he did not give him to her. Another one took him, and she was like screaming, "Just give me my son." When they give him to her, and she saw his chest, the bullets in his head and his chest, she started to cry, and she thought he's dead. But after she sat down and she saw that he was still breathing, and she was like, "Oh my God, he's alive. Just call an ambulance, call anyone, just call anyone and tell them to come. My Ahmed is alive. I want them to make him a surgery, and he will survive. He's alive." So when they started to call people and hospitals, they was like, "No, that area is a closed area. We can't come in. If we come in, they will shoot us. We can't go in that area." And she's saying that after a few hours, he was like, "I want some water." So she bought some water on his lips, and she fed him a little bit of bread. And then at the evening, he was like, "Mom, I'm going to paradise. Don't be sad. I'm gonna take Dad with me to paradise." And that moment she knew that this is the last time she saw or talked to Ahmed, because he was dying in the last moments in the evening.
So let's just go ahead and go straight to it. The story is about deformities, the increasing number of deformities amongst newborn babies in specifically Fallujah and some of the other cities around Iraq. First of all, your assessment of it.
The issue of the use of depleted uranium is older than the issue of the white phosphorus, because the U.S. did use depleted uranium in the 1991 war and during the Iraqi sanctions. So I did meet with many doctors, for example, in Basra, in the south of Iraq, and they said that they have been tracking the number of birth deformities and cancer cases coming from one part of Basra called Abu al-Khasib. Depleted uranium was used very heavily there by the U.S. in 1991, and in that area the number of cancer cases raised from 2 cases a month to 2 cases a day. So around 30 times more within the 12 years that these doctors were following it. There was a professor in Baghdad University called Dr. Suad Al-Azzawi, who did very detailed research on the depleted uranium effect on Iraqis in the 90s. Now the problem is that the use of the white phosphorus in Fallujah has not been studied deeply yet. It was just exposed by an Italian documentary a couple of years ago. And I think there is a need for an independent study and investigation into the effect of this other weapon on Iraqi birth deformities.
Okay, let's just, as a point of clarification, when you refer to 1991, you're specifically talking about the first Gulf War.
Yes.
And now you're kind of seeing a similar pattern happening after what's happened recently between American forces and Iran.
That's correct. The U.S. did use DU bullets and DU missiles, depleted uranium, in 1991 and in 2003 very heavily. I actually did go multiple times with journalists and researchers after 2003 to sites that were bombed by U.S. missiles that are made of depleted uranium, or bullets that are made of depleted uranium that were shot against Iraqi tanks. And I went with the Geiger counter to see the radiation effects. And the radiation in some of these areas were 2,000 times higher than the regular background radiation. And if these were tanks in neighborhoods, they had children playing in them, people were just living around them. Some of the depleted uranium bullets went down in the ground, they were shot in the ground and contaminated the surface water. So the effects are, huge, they are scary. And I don't think we had a proper study to see the exact effect of the DU and white phosphorus and other weapons that were used by the U.S. I think many of these things would constitute war crimes because of their effects on the local populations, the civilian populations that lived around these areas.
Okay, let's talk about that just a little bit. I've read that cases where birth defects are now being reported 2 times a day, whereas before 2003 they were reported maybe 2 times, maybe every 2 weeks or so. And then also, more specifically about the use of white phosphorus, there's some debate about whether or not white phosphorus specifically should be listed as a chemical weapon. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think we have a lack of information in this area. We have two areas that we don't have enough information on. The first one is what weapons have been used by the U.S., because we don't know all the different types of weapons that were used in the U.S. By the U.S. forces in Iraq. We know DU and white phosphorus because of the media coverage. So there is a need for research to see what other weapons are used by the U.S. And the other side is to see the effects of these weapons. For example, in Baghdad, in April of 2003, the U.S. bombed the area around the Baghdad airport, where I used to live, with very strange type of weapons. One of my friends actually had a survey around the area and found that most of the neighbors around the Baghdad neighborhood had respiratory diseases that other people did not have. So we are talking about even wider range of weapons that were used that did affect civilian populations, and there's a lack of independent study groups in Iraq that would conduct a study to show us the effects of the U.S. weapons that were used.
Gotcha. Well, Kevin, it sounds like there's at this point no definitive correlation between the birth defects and the use of white phosphorus and depleted uranium, but certainly a pattern that has emerged. So I guess we're just going to go ahead and keeping tabs on it. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and send it back to you in the studios.
Well, you know, when the director of the...
Depleted uranium, also known as Q metal, D38, and Du, is a toxic and radioactive byproduct created in the production of enriched uranium for nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. It has a radioactive half-life of 4.4 billion years. The U.S. and NATO militaries began using bullets made of depleted uranium in 1991 in the Persian Gulf War, and they have continued using it in every major armed conflict since that time. Du is used because it is extremely dense, 1.6 times as dense as lead, which makes it ideal for piercing heavy armor. Just to give you an idea of how much this is being used, the U.S. fired 640,000 pounds of Du ammunition in the first Gulf War alone. In the initial 2003 invasion, they used an estimated 4 million pounds. When a depleted uranium shell hits its target, it explodes on impact, burning at extremely high temperatures, vaporizing into an ultrafine aerosol with a large percentage of the particles as small as 1/10 of a micron in size. To put that in perspective, these are literally as small as viruses. This depleted uranium dust spreads out into the atmosphere, where it finds its way into water and food supplies, and is inhaled by both soldiers and civilians living and moving throughout the area. Studies have shown that upon inhalation, these particles are small enough to pass through the nose, through the olfactory nerves, and into the brain, where it accumulates. Depleted uranium also accumulates in the bones and teeth due to the fact that the body replaces calcium with it. Governments that use Du always like to portray it as safe by referring to how solid chunks don't emit enough radiation to be harmful from a distance. But this defense fails to account for the fact that these microscopic radioactive particles, once absorbed into tissues, are in direct contact with cells throughout the body. And once it's in the body, there is no way to remove it, nor can these microscopic particles be removed from the environment at large. And remember, depleted uranium remains radioactive for over 4.4 billion years. One of the hidden tragedies of the Iraq wars has been the marked increase in birth defects, nervous system anomalies, and cancer rates. In some areas, birth defect rates have been shown to have increased by 15 times what they were before the war. It's also worth noting that after the Gulf War, thousands of soldiers became chronically ill and have never recovered. This condition is officially called Gulf War syndrome. The U.S. government denies that this illness has any connection with Du, even though soldiers far from the front lines have been found to have large quantities of these radioactive particles in their system. Now, given these facts, you would think that countries that claim to care about human rights would condemn the use of depleted uranium weaponry. However, there have been multiple attempts to impose a moratorium on its use over the years, but France, Britain, the US, and Israel have consistently blocked such proposals. The next time you hear one of these governments or the mainstream media of one of these countries talking about chemical or nuclear weapons that some country may have or be planning to build, keep that in mind.
We are the only country in the world that can stop that. The Israelis, in my opinion, do not have the capability of stopping it. They can delay it. There will also be many, many side effects, all of them adverse, from an Israeli strike. But at the end of the day, if we don't get it done the way the administration's working on it now, which I totally agree with, then we ought to take them out.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, we're working hard. We're working hard.
So I'm here in Tehran. Been here in Tehran for almost a month, actually. This is the Shah's old compound where he lived in opulence. There's 13 palaces here. And so he took the land and he turned it into this opulent, luxurious residence for him and his guests like Jimmy Carter and so forth. Anyway, I was invited here for the Hollywoodism conference, which was really a fantastic conference. Coincidentally, as I've stayed here beyond the conference, Argo is just won Best Picture. If you haven't seen Argo, well then you've missed one of Hollywood's latest propaganda pieces. It starts off looking like it might tell some real truth about America's relationship with Iran, but what little truth exists in the beginning minutes of the film turn into the same old tired propaganda.
We will begin the trials and carry out the sentences.
We wonder where and how the endless parade of hatred will end. What do they want? They say the question should be not what, but who. The answer to that is clear. They want the former Shah now in this
to talk about human rights. Carter and his government have given asylum to the worst criminals.
They outside the cherry dome, holding a single red flower as it grows from the ruins of the starship in the desert, fade to black.
The one main point, however, that film fails to mention, intentionally so, of course, is that the American embassy in Tehran was a nest of CIA spies. It was provably a den of spies because the documents seized when the students took over the embassy during the revolution of 1979, the documents proved that the Shah was, of course, nothing more than a puppet.
It's a most pleasant opportunity for the Empress and myself to be able, thanks to your very kind invitation, to visit your great and beautiful country.
I speak on behalf of all of my fellow Americans in welcoming you to the United States.
This is a great tribute to you, Your Majesty, and to your leadership, and to the respect and the admiration and love which your people give to you.
The Shah was working hand in hand with the American spies, CIA, and so on and so forth. There's so many other untruths in the movie. It's just, I could sit here and discuss that for some time, but just, you know, it's the same old thing. Some other movies we discussed, Unthinkable with Samuel L. Jackson.
You're out.
Do we know if there's a way he could get his hands on fissionable material?
3 years ago, he was on a team checking nuclear facilities in Russia. The Russians can't account for 15 to 18 pounds. They can't be accurate. Around 5 pounds on each bomb. That's 6 to 10 million casualties, folks.
But do we have any direct evidence that this is real?
Tehran paid him $20 million to get nuclear materials out of Russia and into Iran. Then they lost track of him and the money.
How do you know that?
They told us themselves. They didn't want us using younger as an excuse to bomb the crap out of them.
What does he want?
So let me tell you some truths about Iran, which the American people and the West in general are not told. First off, when it comes to nuclear weapons, see, let me explain this first. In the West, we find it hard, if not impossible, to imagine that we might have a leadership that we respect, because we don't have leadership that we respect. They're not leaders, they're puppets, they're prostitutes. Presidents and prime ministers, parliamentarians and congressmen and senators, they're all puppets, with the rare exception. Absolute puppets. We don't respect them. We revile them. And even if we get conned into voting for the next branded, packaged president like Obama, you know, which conned so many people. Oh, here we go. Oh, America is the greatest nation in the world. Look, we have a black president. Look, doesn't he have nice, bright, shiny teeth? And doesn't he speak so nicely? You know, we get conned, but then eventually we realize, oh, wait, it's the same old thing. Obama is nothing more than another prostitute bought and paid for by the banksters. They're all the same. And ultimately, even if we get conned for a little while, we then realize, oh, it's the same old thing. We don't respect our leadership. And we shouldn't, because there's nothing honorable about them. But that's not the way it is here. Regardless of the lies that are being told, Iran has a supreme leader. And this is another thing. You know, we talk about Christian leaders in America. What's to respect about these Christian leaders? What country would Jesus bomb? What kind of Christian bombs other nations? They're not Christians. They're false Christians, but they actually have religious leaders in Iran that you can respect, that live humble lives in modest accommodations and really practice what they preach. And this is kind of hard for people in the West to imagine, but they actually have leadership here that is almost universally respected.
The quality which made Khomeini the central unifying figure and symbol of the Islamic Revolution was that he was seen by all anti-Shah forces as a humble and above all honest man.
So here in Tehran on the anniversary of the revolution, and I'm wondering to myself what Western government could get 2-3 million people out in the streets, not in protest, but in support of the revolution, of the government and the nation that comes from that revolution. It's just not possible. The hypocrisy of the West, it just doesn't even satisfy the reality. Hypocrisy, it's beyond hypocrisy. There is no government in the West that has this kind of support. And yet we have the nerve to threaten this nation and all of its people. Time to wake up.
Grand Ayatollah Khomeini, the architect and the face of the Iranian Revolution.
Here's the truth that you don't know. Most Americans, Westerners don't know. And this is true. And you need to soak this up. The Supreme Leader has issued a decree, a fatwa, making clear that in the eyes of Islam, keeping in mind this is an Islamic leader of the most honor and integrity that you can imagine, who lives consistent with the values of Islam. A decree has been issued by the Imam Khomeini that nuclear weapons are basically an affront to God. They are a crime against humanity. And therefore, Iran cannot pursue a nuclear weapons program because it would be an insult to God.
اعتقاد به بمب اتم نداریم، به سلاح اتمی نداریم، دنبالش هم نخواهیم رفت. بر طبق مبانی ما، مبانی اعتقادی ما، مبانی دینی ما، به کار بردن این گونه وسایل کشتار جمعی اصلا ممنوعه، حرامه. این ضایع کردن هرس و نسله که قرآن او رو ممنوع کرده.
And if you think about this, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? How would God want anyone to create nuclear weapons? What sane individual would interpret God's creation as sanctioning the production of nuclear weapons, much less the use of nuclear weapons? Well, this is how twisted we've become. We've lost our humanity. We've become so indoctrinated that we cannot see the truth even though it stares us right in the face. It is insane that anyone would pursue the production of nuclear weapons. And the United States, my birth nation, has not only produced nuclear weapons, but has used them twice. And I've been to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I've seen the effects of this hell on earth that we created. So, you know, we are the problem. Iran is not the threat. We are the threat. We in the West, in our puppet governments, we are the threat. We're the ones that have the nuclear weapons. Us, Israel, hundreds of nuclear weapons. Samson option, Israel, threatening to exterminate the world, quite frankly, if it feels its existence is threatened. And Israel ain't going to be around much longer, so is it actually going to carry out that threat? We in the West are the real threat to this world. We're the biggest hypocrites on the planet, and the fact that we're targeting Iran, a nation that has not attacked another nation for centuries, the only war that it's indulged in has been a war purely of self-defense in which Iraq, our little attack dog under Saddam Hussein, who was heavily armed by us and supported by us, not just the US, the West, and even Russia, attacked Iran, and it was the Iranians who defended themselves and lost many, many lives, probably 1 million lives. We're the threat. Iran is not the threat. So let me tell you one other thing about Iran that I've noticed while being here. First off, you don't see that many police or military at all. You don't see many at all. But when you do, they're pleasant. You know, they're not threatening or foreboding. Another thing, Tehran, this city has about 17 million people in it. You know how many rapes and murders are in this city on a daily basis? Basically zero. Zero. Imagine that. I want you, Americans in particular, to imagine having a city with 10, 15 million people and watching the news and not seeing this murder, that rape, this murder, that rape, this kidnapping, because that's all the first 10, 15 minutes of the news is in American cities with that many people. Imagine a woman, your mother, your sister, your wife, being able to walk the streets of a city in America with virtually no threat of being raped or murdered. Because that's what they have here. And there's one more thing I want to say about Iran. There's a quiet confidence of the people here. In the West, we're not confident at all. We're deeply insecure. And the way we cover our insecurity is by projecting outward with our corrupt politics and our military. This is what we do. In Iran, it's different. There's a quiet confidence to the people here. And as per usual, as has been my experience in Iraq as well, and certainly in Palestine, I have been blessed immensely with a tremendous amount of hospitality and generosity, a warmness, an openness, an honesty. And, you know, this month that I've spent in Tehran, it has been a real blessing. And I hope somehow, some way that the American people in particular, but the West in general, comes to realize the truth about the lies that we're being told, because Iran is not the threat. We need to take care of our own house. We need to get our own government sorted out, because in particular in America, the enemy is well inside the gates. And you know what? Iran has the same enemy we do. Zionist, Jewish supremacists who run the United States government. That's an enemy. That's an enemy inside our gates, and it's the same enemy that's threatening Iran as well. It's time to sort this mess out. We need to clean our own house and stop looking at other people and sticking our noses in their business. Let's get real. Let's take care of our own house.
His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel.
A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to be feared. The traitor is the plague.
Average age of the young American serving in uniform today is 20 and a half years of age, making him about 10 months older than his grandfather, who would have served in my war. He's a high school graduate. He's a volunteer. He is brighter, better educated, better trained, led, and equipped than any soldier, sailor, airman, guardsman, or Marine of any country in history. He goes to work wearing an 8-pound Kevlar helmet, a 45-pound flak jacket, and today in Kandahar, it was 110 degrees, and he'll hike up those hills and walk back down them without complaining. He's been taught chemistry and physics and ballistics and avionics and electronics to operate and maintain the most sophisticated weapons and equipment ever designed by the hand and mind of man. He can use his body like a weapon, and his weapon like part of his body. And he can take a life or save one because he has been so remarkably well trained. The images of the young Marines and soldiers and sailors and airmen going to Bible studies and religious services aren't staged. They're all real. They're all spontaneous, and nearly all of them are initiated by those young Americans in harm's way. When they gather in prayer circles and huddle up before a mission, they're not going out to play football. They are going into mortal combat, and they know that some of them are liable not to come back. And they do it because they have faith. Just for the grins, how many of you raised a teenage boy? I used to do this when Betsy wasn't there, because she eventually told me, I saw you raise your hand. I did that. Think about getting a teenage boy to clean up his own room, do his own laundry, fix his own meals, clean up everything without a size 10 in the backside. And yet that same youngster today washes and mends his own clothing, feeds himself, takes care of cleaning his weapon, cleaning himself. He's totally self-sufficient. The kid who once wouldn't share a candy bar with his little brother now gives away his last drop of water to a wounded comrade, his only MRE to a hungry Afghan kid, and splits his ammo with a mate in a firefight. I always save this one for last when I'm explaining it to young people about who they are, because so few of them know the truth of these youngsters. This is a frame taken from my footage on the 6th of April, 2003. Baghdad is the smoke pall you see in the background. The Marine unit I'm with embedded is the van, the lead element of the attack on the eastern corridor. We're about 15 miles outside of Baghdad, and a Republican Guards regiment ambushes this Marine rifle company. They spin their Humvees around, and there is a gunfight that occurs between this regiment and this rifle company. And in the midst of the beaten zone, the area where the intersecting bullets are crossing, a United States Navy corpsman I had first met in Kandahar in 2001 rushes into the battlefield, right through the fire, drags two wounded Marines out, and carries them on his shoulder to a helicopter that's landed in the roadway. And in this footage right here, I am standing on the ramp of that helicopter. And this corpsman, who's rushed now twice before and brought these two wounded back, now has a third one. And off to the right-hand side, as you look at the screen, a Reuters news crew sets up their tripod, and they're videotaping him going in and out. And as this guy staggers back into the gunfight, one of them shouts out, "Hey, mate, what did you do that for? Didn't you notice?" In other words, you stupid American. Didn't you notice that wasn't a Marine? If you look carefully at that photograph, you'll see that the wounded warrior, who's already been bandaged up by that United States Navy medical corpsman, isn't a Marine. It's a wounded Iraqi soldier. And this U.S. Navy corpsman has rushed into the battlefield to save his life. And so, because it's polite company, Wayne, I can only put it this way. In response to the Reuters news crew, the Navy corpsman gives them a gesture. You're not supposed to get that part. He gives them a gesture. He says, "Didn't you notice? He was wounded. That's what we do. We're Americans."
And I tried hard to be proud of my service, but all I could feel was shame. And racism could no longer mask the reality of the occupation. These were people. These were human beings. I've since been plagued by guilt anytime I see an elderly man, like the one who couldn't walk, who we rolled onto a stretcher and told the Iraqi police to take him away. I feel guilt anytime I see a mother with her children, like the one who cried hysterically and screamed that we are worse than Saddam as we forced her from her home. I feel guilt anytime I see a young girl, like the one I grabbed by the arm and dragged into the street. We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism is this occupation. Racism within the military has long been an important tool to justify the destruction and occupation of another country. It has long been used to justify the killing, subjugation, and torture of another people. Racism is a vital weapon employed by this government. It is a more important weapon than a rifle, a tank, a bomber, or a battleship. It is more destructive than an artillery shell, or a bunker buster, or a Tomahawk missile. While all those weapons are created and owned by this government, they are harmless without people willing to use them. Those who send us to war do not have to pull a trigger or lob a mortar round. They do not have to fight the war, they merely have to sell the war. They need a public who is willing to send their soldiers into harm's way. They need soldiers who are willing to kill and be killed without question. They can spend millions on a single bomb, but that bomb only becomes a weapon when the ranks of the military are willing to follow orders to use it. They can send every last soldier anywhere on earth, but there will only be a war if soldiers are willing to fight. And the ruling class, the billionaires who profit from human suffering, care only about expanding their wealth, controlling the world economy. Understand that their power lies only in their ability to convince us that war, oppression, and exploitation is in our interest. They understand that their wealth is dependent on their ability to convince the working class to die to control the market of another country. And convincing us to kill and die is based on their ability to make us think that we are somehow superior. Soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen have nothing to gain from this occupation. The vast majority of people living in the U.S. have nothing to gain from this occupation. In fact, not only do we have nothing to gain, but we suffer more because of it. We lose limbs, endure trauma, and give our lives. Our families have to watch flag-draped coffins lowered into the earth. Millions in this country without health care, jobs, or access to education must watch this government squander over $450 million a day on this occupation. poor and working people in this country are sent to kill poor and working people in another country to make the rich richer. And without racism, soldiers would realize that they have more in common with the Iraqi people than they do with the billionaires who send us to war. I threw families onto the street in Iraq, only to come home and find families thrown onto the street in this country, in this tragic and unnecessary foreclosure crisis. We need to wake up and realize that our real enemies are not in some distant land. They're not people whose names we don't know and cultures we don't understand. The enemy is people we know very well and people we can identify. The enemy is a system that wages war when it's profitable. The enemy is the CEOs who lay us off from our jobs when it's profitable. It's the insurance companies who deny us health care when it's profitable. It's the banks who take away our homes when it's profitable. Our enemy is not 5,000 miles away. They are right here at home. If we organize and fight with our sisters and brothers, we can stop this war, we can stop this government, and we can create a better world.
Now, look at the situation. It goes like this. What do we fight for? What are all wars about? If they're not plain greed wars, and most modern wars aren't, because in a technological society we have really solved the problem of poverty. Only we don't get on with it because other things compete for attention. But most modern wars are fought over political disagreements, which are pretty shallow. Ideological battles. What kind of government are we going to have? Capitalism called communism, or communism called capitalism? Or what have you? Those wars are fought out of fear. So we say, all right, we're going to blow those bastards to pieces because the only good Viet Cong is a dead Viet Cong. The only good Russian is a dead Russian. We're afraid of them. We don't want anything to do with them. We'd like to just get rid of them. Yeah, but if that is your motivation and this is your spirit, that you're frightened of the enemy, you're not going to be a good soldier. A good soldier is supposed to be courageous. See? You're not supposed to be afraid. So, all right, say, well, okay, we're not frightened of these people. We just think that they've been exploiting everybody else, and we are the knight on a white horse with a lance, and we're going to rescue everybody. Okay? In you go. And you stir up the same kind of problems, resentment. Everybody says to the knight on the white horse, gee, aren't you a stuffed shirt? You think you're holier than everybody else. You offend us by your righteousness. You're disgusting. You're not even human. And after all, you're a hypocrite. Because you may come on politically with this white horse, but you have all kinds of rackets back home and you know it. And nobody's impressed. But still, you're courageous. You've won all that courage. You're not afraid of death and all that. So, if you're not afraid of death and all that, the question comes up again. Why fight? What's the point? Who are you protecting? Are you going to teach your children to be afraid and say, I'll protect my children because they've been taught to be afraid? I'm the father. I've learned not to be afraid. Why didn't I teach my children not to be afraid? If I had, I wouldn't have had to defend them. Because they would have said it's just an illusion and we can dissolve out of this body and appear somewhere else. Because if that is what happens, and it's pretty obvious that it is. I mean, when I say you'll appear somewhere else, everybody who appears is you. Only you can only experience it one at a time. When you are reincarnated on the next round, you'll be everybody. But everybody only experiences themselves in the singular. But everybody's you, everybody's I, that's our name. We all share that. So there's nothing to worry about in that sense. It'll all come back. Very surprising too, because you won't remember what went before. And that's a pretty good arrangement. But if you know that in your heart of hearts, obviously the only strategy that is worth anything at all is not to chop everything up, but to love everybody. And see that in compassion, if people are frightened and they don't see through the thing the way you see through it, well, you say, I'm really very sorry for you that you are still captivated by the mirage you're in and are still afraid that if somebody knocks you dead, that's a tragedy. It's just the end of a dream. And maybe you dream again in some other form, maybe you won't dream at all. But it doesn't, no sword, no bomb, no nothing can slay the real you. Only let me say here, you cannot use this as a belief, as if I were a mouthpiece of the gods and were vouchsafing to you a new truth. And you said, well, let's believe in it and regard all this phantasmagoria of the world as an illusion and not be afraid of it when it threatens us with guns and prisons and teeth and monstrous things. That's not the way. Because that is a kind of fake courage, which is still a form of armor. And therefore, so long as there is armor, so long as there are defensive walls, they will provoke attack. Real courage is not an armor. It is not a character armor. Real courage is possible only through seeing, it's not possible through belief in the divine self, which we all share in common, as if that was something you could believe in. This is only to be discovered through not hanging on to anything, not having any armor, not having any beliefs, not having any kind of gimmick with which you try to hold the weaving smoke in position. You don't need it. If you really are the basis of and ground of the world, you don't need a belief that that is so. You don't need any practice, any gimmick to hold on to that situation or acquire that situation, because all those gimmicks will lead you to doubt it. I didn't make enough progress today. Progress where? To what? Whither? Where are you going in such a hurry? So, it's a negative approach. Nothing to get. That's what I meant by saying Zen was a big hoax. It was just selling emptiness.
Where to begin? With your constant absenteeism? With your unpresentable appearance? You're up for review.
Brad, for 14 years I've been a whore for the advertising industry. The only way I could save myself now is if I start firebombing.
Whatever. Management wants you gone by the end of the day.
Would you stop thinking about what everyone wants? Stop thinking about what I want, what he wants, what your parents want. What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want? I want freedom! That's what I want, and that's what you should want! I want to stay close to everything. Because being on the spot, I can see trouble immediately. Trouble is like a cancer. You gotta get it early. If you don't get it early, it gets too big, then it kills you. That's why you gotta cut it out. Finish?
No, I'm doing society a favor. So? That's another one right now. I've got you for the rest of your natural-born life if you don't watch your step. You want another one?
I think careers are a 20th century invention, and I don't want one.
Fuck, you're right. No, that's my insurance is probably gonna cover it. What? Things you own end up owning you.
I'll paraphrase Thoreau here. Rather than love, than money, than faith, than fame, than fairness, give me truth.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
What do I do every day, Mum? What do I do? Get up, catch the bus, go to work, come back home, eat chips and go to bed. Is that it?
It's what the rest of us do.
Well, I can't.
Why? Because you're better than us?
No, I didn't mean that. The doctor showed me a better way of living your life. You know he showed you too. That you don't just give up. You don't just let things happen. You make a stand. You say no. You have the guts to do what's right when everyone else just runs away.
A time comes when silence is betrayal. That time has come for us, even when pressed by the demands of inner truth. Men do not easily assume the task of opposing their government's policy, especially in time of war. And I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. What do they think as we test out our latest weapons on them, just as the Germans tested out new medicine and new tortures in the concentration camps of Europe? Now that is little left to build on save bitterness. We are met by deep but understandable mistrust. To speak for them is to explain this lack of confidence in Western words, and especially their distrust of American intentions now. The world now demands a maturity of America that we may not be able to achieve. This way of settling differences is not just. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Somehow this madness must cease. We must stop now. I speak as one who loves America. To the leaders of our own nation, the great initiative in this war is ours. The initiative to stop it must be ours.
Everywhere I go, everywhere I travel, I see people. The whole planet is full of them. Some walk alone, some with a companion, and others go about in groups. Human beings is the name they go by, and they sure love to live huddled together in big, sprawling cities. They all seem very busy doing this and that, and getting on with their lives. Yep, the people of the world tend to look very productive and in charge. If I went and talked to any of them, if I went and interviewed people and asked each of them whether they think they're in charge of their own destinies, I wonder what kind of answers I'd get. Most of them would confidently say, sure, I'm in charge of my own life path. And what about me? Am I really in charge of my own destiny? Do I know where I've come from, why I'm here, and where I'm going? After all, some people would say that just by using this credit card, I'm a virtual serf to powerful men who profit from my existence. Some have said we're all veritable slaves in an invisible penitentiary. If that's the case, then none of us are in charge of our lives. We only think we are, and that's kind of frightening. Maybe that invisible prison does exist. Maybe I can't see it because I've been trained not to be able to see it. Can that situation ever change? After all, I sure don't like to think of myself as being on someone else's chain. There are those who've looked into these matters long before my time. What did they have to say? That's what I'd like to know.
Hello, America. It's July 4th, and most of you probably have plans to go celebrate with barbecues, pool parties, and fireworks. You'll be wearing patriotic t-shirts, using American flag, paper napkins, eating watermelon, and putting your hand over your heart as the national anthem plays. You do this to celebrate the birth of a nation, the American dream, and freedom. You celebrate because you still haven't come to terms with the fact that the nation that you love so much died a long time ago, and that all that was left behind was a dream. America, it's time to wake up. Wake up, wake up. America, land of the free, home of the brave, is long gone. It slipped away when you weren't paying attention. It died without honor. It was never buried, and it never got a funeral. It's time to stop celebrating the freedom that you no longer have, the freedom that you traded for security. It's time to stop pretending that everything's okay. It's time to stop pretending that we can fix this, that we can put the pieces back together again. It's time to mourn what we've lost and move on. No man is more hopelessly enslaved than the one who believes he is free. Only when you face reality, when you've recognized the evil that's infiltrated our nation, and seen clearly the bondage that's wrapped itself around our lives, will you realize the urgency to stand up and fight. America, it's time to wake up. Wake up, wake up. There is a battle to be fought, but it isn't going to be fought in voting booths, or in permanent protest, or in designated free speech zones. These trinkets are the pacifiers of the masses, petty distractions to keep our attention away from the true power that we hold and have always held. It's time to take back what was stolen. Take it back without asking permission from the thieves who took it, and with the resolve that only comes when you realize that you truly have nothing left to lose. America, it's time to wake up.
United we stand across this great land, you and I giving a helping hand. We come from far, we come from wide, but this glowing feeling inside. We're here to right the wrong, so come on everyone, follow along. We will march on together through any type of weather, through thick or thin. We will persevere and we will win. Together, you and me, that's the power of we. Now, imagine waking up, no food, no water, you're sick and works harder. Those are the people trying to stay sane, but they just can't take the pain. It's like never-ending acid rain. They're told not to cry, but it's hard when your family says goodbye. Now they're caught in the haze of their dreams, a world full of lies and sighs, a world full of hate, knowing there's a better world we can create, but for now there's only dead faith. Some people sit back and watch it all happen before their eyes, hope for a hero to rise, but guess what, guys? Gunshots fired, more soldiers hired. Is this what we want? War? But at least blood, flesh, and gore, yet we managed to do some more. We need to learn from our mistakes. No more outbreaks or earthquakes, but more handshakes. We need to keep moving on. Hey, life's like a marathon. If we give up now, we'll never reach our goal. But right now, there's still sadness, madness, corruption, abduction. No matter, we keep on suffering these ways till we reach the end of our days. People, love does not come out of a rifle barrel. It comes from your heart. The human race is falling apart. But one thing can make a big difference. So if we all work together, there's never saying never. When we link or join with each other, we become a powerful essence of light in this world of dark. Stand our ground and leave our mark. So let's work with others. After all, we're all sisters and brothers. Doors don't just open. We have to find a way, a solution to our problem. There are people hungry, people begging for change. And I'm not talking pennies or nickels. I'm talking change, like paying forward. And it starts with you. It says in the commandments to treat everyone equally. Well, why is it that there are people spending their days crying while others keep on buying? Some people wake up. No need to go to the salon, put those fake nails and hair extensions on. No need for the mall, spending all your money, pretending you don't care at all. We need to work together now. Join me on my quest to victory. Open up your mind and you will see that that's the power of we.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
I developed a detector that replaces the current detectors that Homeland Security has. For hundreds of dollars, I've developed a system that exceeds the sensitivity of detectors that are hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Look down there. Would you really feel any pity if one of those dots stopped moving forever? If I offered you 20,000 pounds for every dot that stopped, would you really, old man, tell me to keep my money? Or would you calculate how many dots you could afford to spend? Free of income tax only.
We're moving on a road towards disposable technology. If anyone here ever bought a Furby, right? The Furby costs like $20, $30. It has more technology in it than they used to put a man on the moon. And many people have now thrown out their Furbies because it's kind of dumb and they throw it out. It's disposable technology. We're, before too long, going to get to the point where every soda can, every cereal box is going to be able to have a CPU, a screen, and a camera on board it, and a Wi-Fi connector so that it can be connected to the internet. And what will that world be like?
If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
So what did I think? I'm holding out for something better.
And it's inevitable that these hard times are going to be coming. I mean, everyone needs to just accept that reality.
When I was studying political science back in, the early 90s, I went to college, and I remember I was a hard-charging Republican, and I had an economics teacher that I questioned. I said, how is it possible that we're able to run up tens of billions of dollars the way that Reagan had? And the answer was, well, we'll just inflate our way out of it. Mm-hmm. And that was the given thing. Like, oh, we'll just inflate our way out of it. I didn't understand back then that meant the destruction of the dollar. Mm-hmm. I have congressional testimony of Alan Greenspan with congressmen asking, is it possible to continue Social Security in the structure that it has? And Alan Greenspan says, we can promise any amount of any amount of money as far out and as big as you want. And he went on to add, which he did not need to do. This guy's a very sharp guy. He went on to conclude that the only thing that he could not guarantee was the purchasing power of those dollars.
And we can guarantee cash benefits as far out and at whatever size you like, but we cannot guarantee their purchasing power.
I mean, that's the world's most powerful central banker in the halls of the most powerful government the world has ever seen, basically saying, we're going to destroy the dollar. Kyle Bass is a very bright investor down in Texas. He met with senior Obama financial officials and asked how they plan on solving this political crisis, how they're going to fix the trade deficit. And this senior Obama official said, we're going to kill the dollar. And Kyle Bass's response was, more, you mean?
And when I asked a senior member of the Obama administration last week, how are we going to grow exports if we won't allow nominal wage deflation? And he says, we're just going to kill the dollar. And I said, okay, more, you mean?
That's what they're doing. They're going to destroy the dollar one way or the other. Right. And when you realize that the dollar is the basis for our entire economy, your job, your retirement, the valuation systems, probably our love lives, if we're to be honest, every aspect of our lives is going to be dramatically affected by this. And it's going to be the first time ever in human history that the whole world is untethered to any financial reality other than the subjective value of what a dollar is. But when the dollar collapses, it's going to be all these other fiat currencies collapse. And what will end up coming out of it is an anger phase where humanity is going to suddenly realize how naked and bare they are because they don't have any real assets, real skills, or real friends.
Wow. That was put in a way that I've been trying to understand and communicate.
Everything that we see, watch, pay attention to is all an illusion to get us to sacrifice, hope for, fear, something outside of our control. And that's their ultimate power. And they're going to keep using it and wielding it and coming up with different distractions, different justifications, different entertainment, different things over and over and over again. And it's until people stop worrying about things outside of their control and take personal responsibility for themselves, nothing is ever going to change. So I've been, preaching the word that, I don't care what Obama does. I don't care what they do. Their system doesn't work without us constantly giving our power to them, whether it's our money, our views, our whatever. We empower them. They don't control us. And I think that the more people start to wrap their mind around this and realize that the solution isn't in trying to change the system. The solution isn't into trying to push your ideas onto somebody else. The solution is to walk away from the system, become independent of it, be an inspiration for others to do the same thing, become financially, politically, mentally, philosophically independent of everybody, and respect other people's, vision of doing that. So, I look at this, as an outside observer. I'm not emotionally involved like I was back when I was a hard-charging Republican know-it-all, ruin everybody's party about, all the Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity talking points. I see that it's all a game. The left, the right, it's all a scam.
Okay, so obviously people who have been listening to the first segment are thinking, okay, so I need to kind of abdicate from the system. How do they do that? What do people need to start thinking about in order to say, you know what, you're absolutely right. The system, whatever we want to call it, has had way too much input in my life. How do they leave?
Probably the best. I have a video called The 4 Steps to Walk Away, and at least in my own life, I've been struggling with this since, I became semi-aware in 2005, probably totally aware in 2008, but then detaching myself from that reality has been a very long road, and it comes down to, at least in my mind, 4 steps. Number one, you have to get rid of toxic thoughts. So much of what holds any person back, and I don't care whether, it's your job, career, love life, or anything, their own negative thoughts of self-doubt and things that they can or cannot do. And that, to me, is the biggest struggle. That's, to me, 90% of the battle is just stop. Any negative thought that you have can instantly be turned around into a positive thought. And it's a little bit of a mental game, and it's very difficult, especially in this, world of peer pressure and, inadequacy always, flaunted in front of you. Somebody goes, Chris, it's easy for you to do that. You have money. Well, I would try to turn that around. If you're broke, say, well, I got nothing to lose. It's the exact same reality. You're not lying to yourself. But, how much more empowering is it to say I have nothing to lose versus I'm broke? I know it sounds childish and a little psychosomatic, a little psychosis here, playing mind games, but that's what this all comes down to. You look at the most successful people, people who came from nothing, they're the ones that had that will and determination to do, what they had in their head. And the reality is the more that people are their own positive cheerleader, the more good things will happen. The second step I see is get rid of toxic relationships. This is probably the most emotional thing. Now, the first one's more intellectual. This one's much more emotional. To identify the people that probably put those negative thoughts in your mind, whether it's a spouse, a brother, a sister, a mother, parent, teacher, your boss, somebody is constantly pumping negative thoughts in your mind. And I think once people start becoming conscious and really start controlling their own positive thoughts, it makes it easier to identify those toxic people in your life, and you know who they are. They're the ones that the phone rings and your heart, steps up a beat, or they enter the room, you don't know if they're in a really good mood or a really bad mood. But you have to cut those people out like your life depends on it. And I don't care if it's a boss, I don't care if it's your, family member or whatever. You have to cut them out of your life if you're going to, survive, if you're going to, move anywhere, become what you should be in your life. The third step, which is usually a step everybody tries to, jump to and forget about the other two, is get rid of your toxic assets. I identified that our monetary system is a debt-based monetary system that must create more debt every year in excess of the debt and interest accrued the year before. And if private citizens aren't going to do it, you can damn well sure that the banks and the politicians are going to do it for us. The end of the road is going to be the destruction of all paper assets, And if you have a paper asset that has counterparty risk that can be inflated away, taxed away, confiscated away like those poor MF Global people, you are seriously hurting yourself. So I've been recommending people to get into real, tangible assets. My preference is silver. And then the final step, Josh, is, and I know you talk about this a lot, is get rid of the toxic path in your life. You know, once you have a clear mind, you have a good group of people supporting you, got rid of all those toxic people, you have real assets that can't be, tricked away, inflated away, or stolen away. The final step is to do something that resonates with you. Chances are we've been indoctrinated to fit into some sort of collective, whether it's this, the schools, the military, the corporations. They all want little good slaves to go into work, click their box, and go home and consume. And I think that you've done a great job of trying to get people to identify what makes them happy. What would they like to do if they could work for free? And at least start it as a hobby on the side so that when the time comes when your job doesn't exist because the dollar's been destroyed and 70% of the economy that's a consumer economy is destroyed, you have some real tangible skills that are of value to humanity.
Throughout history, in most cultures, women have been treated as second-class citizens at best, and quite often as outright slaves. Even to this day, there are places on this planet where a woman cannot show her face without risking violence from those who believe that a woman's face should always be covered. Now, this is wrong, and it needs to be changed, but the path that our society took as a response was wrong too. And whether or not the majority of Westerners are ready to look this issue in the eye or not, the consequences are coming home to roost, literally. When both parents work full-time, who raises the children? And before I anger those on the other side of the fence that I'm about to cross, please allow me to preempt one assumption. This is not a question of gender-based roles. I don't care whether it's the father or the mother who stays home to raise the children. Obviously, since mother's milk is far healthier than any synthetic baby formula, it's more convenient to have the mother be the one who stays home with the children in the early years. But let me make one thing very, very clear. It's far more important for young children to have access to at least one parent at all times than it is to have good nutrition. And if at least one of the parents is not willing to commit to stay home and raise that child, then that child will be raised by strangers. And even the best of daycare, and even the best nanny, will never convey the love of a parent. And if you think those early years can be replaced by any dollar amount, I have to say that you're lying to yourself. And someday when you're old and gray, you're going to look back with an unquenchable regret for that time that you traded for money. I'm sure that some of you that are hearing this are feeling a twinge of resentment. And I can imagine somebody thinking these words. Who are you to judge? This is our life. This is our family. Mind your own business. My response? Are you kidding? Do you really think that this is just your business? When children are raised by television, video games, and daycare, this impacts all of society. And whether or not you care about how your kids come out, I care about how your kids come out. Because someday, your kids will be our policemen and our policewomen, our judges, our soldiers, our politicians, our media figures, our doctors, our future. And if someone isn't there for your child, then your child is going to be less equipped to bring something positive to the table. And to be perfectly honest, that's putting it lightly. So if you have no intention of actually raising your kids, then please don't have kids. Get a cat. Buy a dog. Anything. And I know that I'm stepping over the line of what some people would consider socially appropriate when I'm saying this. But you know what? The truth is extreme. And to make it moderate is to lie.
Thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few engage in it. Henry Ford. One of the greatest challenges to becoming totally free is to be able to think independently from everyone else. You know instinctively no one cares about you as much as you care about yourself. Yet we constantly listen to others about what is best for us instead of thinking about what is best for us. That is because we live in a world where everybody tells you what to think, but no one tells you how to think. We are blasted every day with advertising, financial sales pitches.
Sometimes you wish people didn't agree with you all the time. At MF Global, we tell you what's good for you.
Political media propaganda, religious dictates, and more social pressure to conform. Most of our lives, we do not make any real decisions. We just kind of fall into a routine. You see, when you really don't think, you leave your mind open to people who do think. The real and most often unnoticed danger is a class of predators manipulating societies for their own selfish benefits. If you go along to get along and not think outside of the box, you risk being caught in the undertow of a doomed society or worse. There is a lot of money and power derived off of having a sucker born every day. Our elite molds societies by educating people just enough to run the machine, but never enough to ask if this is the best machine for us. Think about it. Our controlled school system teaches sex, drugs, and multiculturalism in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades, and not even how to balance a checkbook by high school. The elite system wants utterly dependent people to control for power and profit. They do not want fully aware people who can see through the mainstream media lies, the Wall Street Ponzi schemes, or federal abuses. They certainly do not want people educating others to our common plight of this illusion. Do your thoughts serve to free you, or simply to make you freely serve? Your thoughts are not your own. If you ever wonder why Americans are broke, depressed, and lifeless, look no further than whose thoughts they are thinking. If they are listening to the elite's financial conmen, they are constantly stripped of their wealth through a myriad of schemes. If they're listening to the elite's mainstream media, they're depressed about the national problems because they're too big and the experts say that there's no hope, or worse, hope is coming someday. If they're listening to the elite's medical community, they're hooked on psychotropic drugs. They will never get their fire back by tackling their life's challenges. The elite give us the illusion of freedom, but control all of the choices. The elite give us the choice of 500 cable stations, and yet the same message comes from every one of those channels. They give us aisles and aisles of food, and yet 90% of it is just corn and soy byproducts. They give us a choice of hundreds of political candidates, yet nothing changes because both sides are bought and paid for by the elite. They give you the choice of investment of stocks, bonds, and real estate. But when this all goes down, you will see that it's all part of the same illusion of the dollar. This paradigm is controlled by the elite, and if you don't think independently for yourselves, you cannot help but to be controlled, whether you know it or not. Every aspect of your life is monitored, regulated, taxed, and controlled, not for your betterment, but for the betterment of others. To do most high-paying jobs requires a certification or a license. That's a form of control. Most assets that you have or own outright are not yours. Try not paying property taxes on a home that you own outright, and I'll show you who the real owner is. All your communications are monitored and recorded. Now the federal government wants these records to be kept indefinitely. Do you think you own your 401k? Try getting your money out. Or how about the stocks that you own outright? The fact is, the DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, owns all of the stocks that are traded. If you want to do anything to your home, you better get permission from the homeowner association or the local zoning board. All these examples, plus many, many more, have nothing to do with making your life better. They exist to create power, profit, and a parasitic life for somebody else. Let's take a more detailed look at this. Our entire life is a rigged game designed to keep us down. We are fed consumerism, taught that we have no purpose, taught to obey, medicated with alcohol or drugs. Early pregnancy is glorified. Poor diets with fast food. Because of a poor education, people have a lack of vision. We have unhealthy relationships. We're entertained and not really educated. Divorce is a huge setback for many people. With this economy, we're faced with dead-end jobs, an entitlement mentality. We are trained to work for the government. People are saddled with credit card debt, auto debt, mortgage debt, student debt. People are driven to attain worthless diplomas, to become licensed professionals. And once they find some sort of success, they're marked with progressive taxation. They could become a legal target. If they create a business, they're forced to deal with increasing regulations and scrutiny. And then after they're all done, they're faced with the death tax. And regardless of what level of society that you're at, you're faced with federal debt, state debt, local debt, corporate bailouts, weak economy, bank failures, energy dependence, inflation, outsourced jobs, wars, political distractions, illegal immigrants, propaganda, popping of asset bubbles, genetically modified food, cancer, rising health insurance, and most dangerous of all, other ignorant people. At the root of all these traps, there is an elite that has created, perpetuated, and profited off of this reality. And yet if people were truly to see how the world functions, they would see that the elite are unnecessary, along with their traps. There are 7 billion people in this world. It is crazy to think that less than 10,000 people control this paradigm. Yet this is only possible when the elite convince the 7 billion people that they need the elite and the institutions that they run. Our problems start and stop with us. We are stronger than they are, and they know it. They lack any personal or relationship skills to work with others without the threat of force. Their most powerful weapon is the lie that they convince us to believe. Start seeing the world as it is and think for yourself.
I started to say a prayer out loud, and it was something like, "Oh God, please, if you can help us out of this situation, I'll be very grateful, and I'll do what I can, to repay you for this debt that I will owe you." And I remember Pat saying, "O'Neill, quit praying. God is not the one to help you now. This is reality. This is what we need to focus on. I don't want you to go into some la-la land, not pay attention, and then get killed." I was actually grateful for him to say that. I was really trying to put my focus somewhere else and not keep it here. Pat saved my life.
No one is coming to save you. The Federal Reserve is not coming to save you. The IMF and World Bank is not coming to save you. In fact, no bank in the world is coming to save you. They can't. Barack Obama is not coming to save you. Mitt Romney is not coming to save you. In fact, no politician or government in the world is coming to save you. They can't. Apple is not coming to save you. ExxonMobil is not coming to save you. In fact, no corporation in the world is coming to save you. They can't. Fox News is not coming to save you. The New York Times is not coming to save you. In fact, no major media outlet in the world is coming to save you. They can't. The Marines are not coming to save you. The police are not coming to save you. No armed force in the world can save you. They can't. Occupy Wall Street is not coming to save you. The Tea Party is not coming to save you. No social organization is coming to save you. They can't. Hugo Salinas Price is not coming to save you. Eric Sprott is not coming to save you. No investor in the world is coming to save you. They can't. No secret ninja army is coming to save you. No cartoonish benevolent bankers are coming to save you. No fantasy superheroes are coming to save you. They can't. They can't because no one is coming to get you. No Muslim radicals, no neocons, no fascists, no socialists, no Jews, no Illuminati, no bankers, no shadow government. All of our problems start and stop with us. We are the ones that must face the common consequences of our active or passive support for this paradigm. We are the ones that took on the debt. We are the ones that volunteered for the wars. We are the ones that cheered our masters. We are the ones that filled their coffers. We are the ones that let the criminals run the crowd. We are the ones that went along with the crowd. We are the ones that built this beast. And we are the ones that are dependent on this beast. We did this, and there's no avoiding the inevitable consequences of our actions or inactions. We are the ones dreaming or fearing the future and not concentrating on right now. We are the ones dreaming or fearing the past and not fully living in the present. We cannot wave our magic wand of denial when reality comes knocking. We cannot pray for mercy when judgment day comes. For when fate, karma, reality, destiny, or judgment arrives, we will know that what we did or did not do will ultimately be our lot in life. We did not embrace the responsibility of living and took the easy way out time and time again. We did not say enough to either individual or institutional abusive relationships. We empowered those that sought to keep us down, and worse, cheered them on while they did it. No one is coming to save you, no one is coming to get you. We made our bed, now we must lie in it. We are either on our own highway to hell or stairway to heaven. In short, we are our own salvation and damnation. We decide, and we alone must live with those results. Only you can see things as they are instead of holding on to fairy tales. Only you can stop supporting a paradigm built off of debt and death. Only you can focus on what you can do to empower yourself and become independent. Only you can stop using their debt money and buy things that have real, tangible value. Only you can save yourself. So stop pushing others to listen to you and stop blaming others for your own problems. It is time to grow up, stand up, and face the facts that this way of life is done. And it should be done, for what are we holding on to? In fact, it needs to end so horribly that humanity can finally say that debt and collectivism did not work. Only then can we start building a life built around honest money and honest people.
Fear. We all have an intimate relationship with it. Fear motivates or limits us. Fear allows us to expand our horizons or contract our possibilities. However, fear is a construct of the mind. There are numerous things people are scared of, and here are a few. Xenophobia, fear of the great mole rat. Xanthophobia, fear of the color yellow or the word yellow. Octophobia, fear of the figure 8. Electorophobia, fear of chickens. Lanonophobia, fear of string. While the list of fears may seem ludicrous, to someone the terror seems very real. Here's another list of phobias to consider. Neophobia, fear of anything new. Atelophobia, fear of imperfection. Atisophobia, fear of failure. Decidophobia, fear of making decisions. Galatophobia, fear of being laughed at or ridiculed. Does this list seem ludicrous? Or do some or all of these fears seem incredibly familiar to you? We are not born with fears. We acquire them over time through interactions with our environment. As we grow and develop into adulthood, the frightening programs and conditioning we acquire remain prevalent in our memories. While the fears may have served a purpose in the past, the question is, do they still serve you today? Considering our individual fears, imagine how these programs are collectively affecting our society. Our individual lives are the microcosms that make up the societal macrocosm. The madness we see in the world today is a direct result of our fears. Would you like to create something different in society? Are you tired of seeing the upheaval and chaos that has become commonplace today? Become aware of the fears pervading your thoughts and actions. As we individually and collectively choose to face our fears, we can alter our course, or we can remain in fear, perpetuating this list. Phrenemophobia, fear of thinking. Sophophobia, fear of learning. Prosophobia, fear of progress. Tropophobia, fear of moving or making changes. Will you stay confined in your prison of fear, or will you choose freedom? The choice is yours. The time to decide has come.
Walking away is not easy, but it can and must be done. The process that I see it has 4 steps. Number 1, you need to get rid of toxic thoughts. Whether you think that you can or whether you think that you can't, you are right. Henry Ford. Negative thoughts of lack, scarcity, or fear are the start of all of our problems that we have. It is not your fault, as the society that we have produces this on an industrial scale purposefully. This is where 90% of the battle is, and how the elite use your thoughts to self-regulate your behavior. I produced the Sons of Liberty Academy to show the behind-the-scenes process of controlling humanity. And like a magician revealing a trick, once you see it, you will never be fooled again. Every negative thought like, I'm poor or have nothing, can have the opposite positive thought that is still true, like, I have nothing to lose or nothing to hold me back. Getting control of your mind is the most important step in really changing your world. By being grateful for what you have and not focusing on the narcissistic, consumer-driven scarcity mentality of lack, you will channel your energies into people, skills, and things that empower you as a person, and stop channeling your energy into wage-slave jobs only to spend whatever gains you sacrifice for into consumer debt-driven binges. Once you purge yourself of toxic thoughts, you will naturally notice that there are a lot of people that are in your life that are spewing toxicity into your life all the time. For the most part, they're completely unaware of the toxic ideas that they spill, as misery loves company.
But you will start to notice a few psychopaths that actually use these toxic thoughts to control you and others out of fear. You will need to cut all of these toxic influences out of your life as if your life depends on it. If this means that you have to lose best friends, leave your family like I did, or leave your boss, this must be done. You can start slowly and transition these changes over time. But when you're awake, it allows you to be an observer of the process as opposed to emotionally involved. This gives you great power, as the number one tool toxic people use is irrational fear. The benefit of doing these first two steps is that once you gain a sense of peace through logic, you will feel happier and more in control of your life. You will not only cut out the toxic bullies, you will weaken them by no longer serving their wild demands. There is another huge benefit to this. By being a better person, you will attract others of the same mindset. You will be able to feel the power of the abundance mentality, where you can give all your energy away to grateful people who deserve it, and they in return will give you far more than you would ever receive through the old mindset of lack and scarcity. This is where opportunities to work with good people or do great things start to happen. Even if you only do these first two steps, which are totally achievable in any situation, you have already won 95% of the battle in life. You can have or do very little of anything in your life if you do these two things and have a truly blessed life, helping and loving those that you care for and not empowering those that would seek to abuse you. But people want to learn how to get out of their toxic job and still be able to support their family. As I have said before, there are only two happinesses that you'll find in your life. Number one is the day that you get rid of the scarcity mentality, that you can provide for yourself and your family without fear. The only other happiness that you'll ever find in your life is helping others to achieve the same level of abundance. The third step on this path is perhaps the simplest: get rid of toxic assets. All paper assets have counterparty risk, and their value depends on this debt-based paradigm. Stocks, bonds, pensions, insurance, and even cash in your hand are only worth something so long as this economic paradigm exists. When you logically see the forces of exponential growth of debt, declining demographics, depleting energy resources, systemic corruption, and wealth disparity, it does not take a brain surgeon to see that things that cannot go on forever won't. We are in the winter of this debt and death cycle. It will end in war and economic crisis, and every time we go through this crisis, assets with no counterparty risk that have real tangible value become very sought after by humanity. Food and fuel will be the things that humanity cannot live without and will sacrifice the most for. I recommend that you get a buffer for the day that the dollar dies and our just-in-time manufacturing and logistics system seizes up. Think of your digital wealth as merely a future claim on real goods and not real wealth itself. Actually, our money is anti-wealth, since it only becomes valuable when you spend it on real things. Then you start to think about how much money they can create out of thin air to buy those real assets, and you start to see the insanity of thinking that digits on the computer screen are real wealth. Most food and fuel have storage and degradation issues, which is why people go to precious metals. I chose silver over gold simply because the gold to silver mining ratio that comes out of the ground is 1 ounce of gold for every 9 ounces of silver. And yet to buy gold or silver, the ratio is 1 ounce of gold to 50 ounces of silver. It is my belief that regardless what the dollar value of gold does, silver will outperform gold 5-1. And I believe a strong case can be made that since silver has been used and abused as a cheap disposable industrial metal, that we will go far beyond the 1-9 gold to silver ratio. This is not a battle of politics, finances, or military strength. It is a battle of human consciousness. This is about what we do, actively or passively supporting with the energy in our lives. Like I said before, if you just do the first two steps, you will already have won 95% of the battle. By doing the third step of getting rid of toxic assets, you start deleveraging the power that the elite use to control us, the dollar. People's loyalty are bought with dollars. The whole thesis behind the silver bullet and the silver shield is that we can empower ourselves with real wealth and collapse their paper Ponzi confidence game. I believe that when you get rid of toxic assets, it will give you the capital and confidence to prepare for the day the dollar dies and your job ceases to exist, or at least provide a buffer for you to take that final step. The final step is to get rid of your toxic path in life. Everybody always starts this with wanting to know how to get rid of their job and skip all the rest. It cannot be done in my opinion, and it would be reckless to try any other way. We cannot change the outside world to be happy or free. We must change ourselves to make the world happy and free. By walking away from your toxic job, you unshackle the final chain that you put on yourself. We were indoctrinated to sacrifice what is good about us to some uncaring collective. We are told to obey authority and not listen to that small voice of your consciousness. We all have special talents and passions that the collective drive out. I suggest that after you do the first 3 steps that you start a hobby or a skill, that you would work all hours and realize that you did not eat all day because you love doing it. Hopefully this has real tangible value that will become far more important after a dollar collapse, and that you can do it on the side of your current career. You will find that simply because you are interested and talented, that people will want to reward you and encourage you to continue with this path. This way that you can build a business that one day you can either leave your job, or at least have a skill that when the dollar collapses you will have the means of supporting yourself when the fiat world collapses.
For God, and you believe it's right to risk your home, your life, to face the evil night. But in the darkest night, when our children are asleep, I think about the families of our enemies. Feel the same, believe in their own truth. They must love the children as fiercely as we do. We all share one thing, our hearts were given from above, and the only thing worth fighting for in this world is love. On and on through the years, the war continues on. Believe it's right to risk your home, your life, to
If you think this message is important and should be viewed by others, please share it. Share it to Facebook, share it to Twitter. Also be sure to like and favorite the video. By doing so, it'll rise in listings and you'll have the opportunity to be viewed by others. Help us get the message out to the national and international stage. And also please subscribe to this channel, The Truth is Full of Lies.